Alright, well this is Aaron Squire and just doing a dev blog. Unfortunately this is dev blog 2 and I really should have had a lot more of these. I didn't do as many as I thought that I would do, and a lot of different things have kind of gotten in the way of doing these, and I have moved pretty quickly. I set out to basically, after I finished the tutorials, last dev blog, which was dev blog 1, this is dev blog 2 and I'm finished, so there's kind of a lot of catching up to do, but the last dev blog I was like in the 5th tutorial. So I finished all the tutorials and I just basically started plugging away at building my own RPG, and it was basically a 3-hour module that I had in Dungeons and Dragons. And the idea was that you had characters where there was something being stolen from the temples, and every night those temples would get hit again and again. Different temples would get hit, and your players had to go and investigate it. Well, it's hard to translate that in a RPG setting, where it is that, so I had to take some liberties and I changed a lot of things around. A lot of the stuff from Dungeons and Dragons world didn't translate well, and so I went from something like 17 temples down to 6, because I felt like that was plenty for the players to do. I also had to make up characters, and in doing so I actually, as I was building the game, I made up a lot of the lore, and a lot of the different things are kind of swimming around in my head, and so the game is finished. As far as the chapter, however, I could always add on more dialogue or other things. I went ahead and added on 2 side quests, which are completely like, you don't have to do those at all to complete the plot line, and I have 2 different ways to complete the game, which is actually not available when I was designing the actual Dungeons and Dragons module. So I'm just going to go through some of the different learning curve things that I did learn. So my opening screen basically is all black, and the character I basically did, this is a character that's an empty character, so it shows up on the screen that way. I went ahead and watched a tutorial to pick this up on YouTube, so you can see over here what I have as an empty character, and that guy actually sits in the corner, and then this is on the event layer. The event layer is basically the programming layer for RPG Maker. This auto runs at the very beginning of the screen, beginning of the game, and it gives you your dialogue and all that stuff, and then it automatically swaps you to your first scene, which takes you over to the Lightning Temple. The Lightning Temple interior, where it is that you'll meet this basically the pastor that's in charge, and you're one of his priests. So your main character is a priest. There's a lot of different priests in this main city of Constantine. I went ahead and named it Constantine after my wife, Constance. And so the main character is you, and you kind of get this exposition that someone's been stealing from the temples, and then you need to go out and do some different things to get there. So while I was doing that, I figured, okay, so now I have one that's already been hit, which was the Lightning Temple. So now I only need a function that figures out 5 different temples, and I wanted it to be random, so the players could basically stake out those different temples and figure out. It's pretty random. I mean, there's nothing that what I could have done is I could have affected a lot of the different text and had the random number generated, and so like the game knows which temple is going to be hit, but the player doesn't know until it is that they go to the night's events, and that way it can affect speech, and then people could more easily find the temple. But I felt like it was enough to just simply make it completely random and just get some input from the people around the town, and I felt like that was good enough for the game. So let's go over the function real quick that gets called. So on each of the temples in the interiors, there's a character like this guy, and he calls a function called current temple. What is it? No, the function basically, where is it? Conditional branch. Okay, so this conditional branch is basically if the boss is active or not. And then a conditional branch, these are basically like Boolean, like conditionals. If the fire temple is on or off, and that has to do with the actual, like if the temple's already been hit, then this gets turned on, and then you can't stake out this temple anymore because it's already been hit, type of thing. And then this control variable, current temple, is 1. That means that it has been hit, and then in that case, then common event stakeout happens. So, and I'm looking for the other control event right now. Okay, so I think the stakeout actually pulls the other event. That's what happens. And this control variable sets the current temple to 1. So each different temple has a different assigned number. This is the number 1 temple, wind is 2, water is 3, ice is 4, and then earth is 5. So it's setting the control variable so that way when it's doing its matchup, it matches up 2 numbers, and if those numbers match, then that's the temple that gets hit, and then and if it isn't, then another temple will get hit, and it turns on the switch for that temple, in which case then everything changes. So like I can do a lot of different text changes and different things like that, and then the player can no longer stake that temple out because it's already been stolen from. So let's go to the actual events that I set up here. And so what happens when stakeout gets called is first of all, like I have this come back later at the very beginning. Like if it just got pulled, then I have a come back later switch that gets turned on, and then it gets turned off if they leave the scene. Now I could have made that somewhere else or made it more arbitrary or put a timer on it. I tried doing a timer and that was a little bit difficult to do. I just simply made it put it on the door, so that way when it is that they leave the area, it gets turned on, turned back off. So that way the player can't basically just sit in the same temple and just talk to this guy over and over again until it gets hit. Until the temple gets hit. He has to at least leave this room, go to the fire temple, and then go back in. Now, I probably should have done that on the main map, but it seems it works pretty well. So first thing is it's going to say is, would you like to stake out the temple? You choose yes or no, and then if you say no, then basically it exits the function, which is way down here, because that's the way everything is layered. And then if you say yes, then it fades out the screen, calls the common event thieves. So it's going to go over to the thieves, which is another event, which does basically all the rolling for us. Does a lot of this rolling. Now, another thing that I felt was really inelegant with the game was that I wanted to do control variables so that it was just simply a choice where it would just roll on a table of 5, and then I could check the variable against 5 different things. Unfortunately, you can only do two variables on control branches, so I have to do this very clunky control variable thing where basically it looks at the temple choice if it's 1, so that if it equals 1, then that means we're on this temple, and so this has already been set by the person that you're talking to, and this gets set by the person that you're talking to. Then it goes down to it also does a random roll on temple choice. So if it equals 1, then it's going to go to this first branch. If it equals 2, it goes to the second branch, and then so on and so forth. Then if the controls, then what it does is it sets the control switch fire to on. Then it looks at hit temple equals 1. Then it sets like a hit, the one that's actually been attacked or been stolen from, to 1, and then it sets come back later to on, which goes back up to the top of the stakeout function, so that way your player has to come back later. They just can't do it over and over again, which I probably could have done a little bit more elegantly in the other function now that I'm looking at it. And if that is all equivalent, if basically this hit temple and temple choice equal 1, then you go back over to the stakeout function, and when that is a yes, then it goes to the common event of thieves, where it is that you have all these different choices to make with the thieves. Most of them lead to a battle with the thieves. There's only one way where you can actually not fight. Well, there's a couple ways you can not fight the thieves. There's one way where I believe you can not fight the thieves and get the game to progress. But if you don't fight the thieves, typically what happens is they just run away, and they're still going to be stealing from the temples. So but if those two things don't match up, if your current temple, which was set by the guy you talked to, and the one that's been hit, which is set by the random function of thieves, if those are not equivalent, then you come all the way down here to where it says you waited for a long time and stayed vigilant, however the thieves didn't come. So that's what's going to happen to the player. So this was I felt like a pretty good exercise to go through as far as functions are concerned, and developing 2 functions that mirror off each other with the 5 temples and different things and the variables that were involved. Moving on to this is battle processing just for when we're dealing with Azrael. So the main enemy's name is Azrael, kind of like a spoiler alert, I guess, for you guys. I guess I should say that before I even start any of this. I'll probably put that up front. But so you basically get all this stuff to work. There's like 5 temples around, and I actually set up. I felt like it was somewhat inelegant. I had to set up, when people entered into these areas, a yes or no, because it was tough as people were trying to walk around knowing where they could or couldn't go. Each one of these is a transfer event, which basically means you go to the different areas that are below them. Like this one will take you to the water temple, and it gives you a choice, yes or no. Do you want to go to the water temple? So then there was that, and after those events are completed, then it turns on this graveyard, which is not accessible. So basically it checks Azrael active on. Is it on? Then when it gets turned on, then you can basically use this graveyard to go into the graveyard scene. Beyond that, you're going to get into this graveyard scene. This guy's going to talk to you about losing some keys. He's going to basically engage you. So you have to set that by looking at the character himself, set him to approach. Another thing I had to do was, as he's running away, on his second value, so actually everything is actually on that second value. So another thing that's interesting about RPG Maker, if you didn't know, is when you add on more pages, if the conditions are met for this page, then this is the topmost page, and all other pages before it get ignored. So if you have like 5 pages and number 5's, all the conditions on these switches has been met, then the 5th page is the one that takes precedence, and all the rest of the pages do nothing. So keep that in mind when you're programming with this. I had a hard time setting up characters where I could put a character in a party and then they would disappear. There's a lot of stuff I actually did now that I'm thinking about it to make this a game. But anyways, so I actually set this guy so that after it is that he after you talk to him and he says, "I'm getting out of here," he changes his speed to 6, which is really fast. It's the fastest he can go. I went ahead and turned through on, which means he can run through terrain, so he can run through walls and different things, and he runs off the screen, and then the event exits. And he'll engage you every time you enter here. He keeps re-engaging you. He's just basically here to tell you, hey, there's some keys to get into this door that you need to get as a key item. Another interesting thing I did, which relates back to the function we just talked about, was originally I just put the keys in one place. Like I put them like over here, and they show up as this little like sparkle. But in order to make it more interesting for the players, what I did was I have multiple different locations where it can spawn, and I did that by relating it to which temple had been hit. And if no temple has been hit, which is possible, then it spawns in this center square. So what I basically did was look at that temple choice which had been set already, and whichever one was the last one that had been set, so by those characters you talk to, that sets a control switch on. And as soon as this self-control switch A equals on, then the page 2, which says self-control switch A is on, takes precedence. So this no longer gets read. And then it goes over here and it shows you where the mausoleum key is. The mausoleum key gets found. You set control switch B to on, which will then activate this page, which does nothing because we don't want the key to be found multiple times. So it basically turns it off, which is exactly how it is that we do party members. So we're going to go to one of the party members. So I'll just go ahead. I mean, this whole thing is basically like a spoiler alert, but so one of the party members that you can encounter is this guy over here. This is modeled after my son Elliot. So we named him Elliot. He's kind of hyper. He runs around. I wanted to make the characters different ways to get them. So what I did was I just this guy is kind of hard to click on and catch because he's kind of fast. I actually made him too fast. I had to lower his speed a little bit. And he'll bounce off the terrain, which helps because there's a lot of trees in this area when you're trying to click on them. So when you click on them, you go through the text, and then it gives you the choice, would you like to add them to your party? And as soon as you do that, it turns a control switch A on, which then switches it to page 2, which means that there's nothing in play. Now again, the control switch will never change back to being off, so the character, you can't get multiple Elliots in your party, which is a good thing. That's what we want to see. Before this was happening, I set up this whole like elaborate thing, and before I figured out exactly how to use self switches properly, but that's a good way to use self switches right there. just kind of running through this quickly. This isn't really meant to be a tutorial. This is more of a blog for myself, for my own purposes, to look back on. So if I'm not really explaining things to a certain level that you would want, I apologize. But this is really, I mean, this is to show you what you could do and some of the different things. I mean, we can obviously, you can always hit me up on Twitter or talk offline, or you can go to the Reddit forums or different things, or send me a message if you like, or just post a message, and you know, I can comment back the best I can, because I'm very, very new to this anyways. So another thing I did was I added on side quests because people weren't leveling very much. So as soon as you leave the Lightning Temple, I found that players really wanted to go inside this cave, which didn't actually have a cave behind it. So I just kind of came in here and tried out the random generation. So basically, if you right click on anything, you come in here and you say generate dungeon, and you can click on this and click on this. This is your floor, that's your wall, and it'll generate a dungeon for you. And then you basically go in and you decorate it and maybe swap it around or change some things. Basically, I put a ball over here, or an icon that's supposed to be a ball, where the kid that's sitting outside says that he's lost it, and you can go in and get it and then come back out and give it to him. Another interesting thing I tried to add on to the game was the like permadeath. So I couldn't manage that right now because the game isn't set up for it. I did want to have a resting area, and so like if your characters do die, there is no Phoenix Downs in the game. I made sure of that. There's nothing to raise your characters from the dead. However, if you go to the barracks, there is a person you can rest with, and that will raise your person back from the dead. Although I changed the term so it doesn't say dead, it says passed out. But I wanted this to be a world where it's very much instilled in the player that things that are undead are very unnatural, and people shouldn't have those kinds of powers, because the main character, the main enemy in the game, seems to have some control over undead, and I wanted to empower that idea. As you know, it's not just like anybody can become a necromancer. This guy, there's something up with this guy, type of thing, and it's very unnatural for this to be happening. Whereas in other things it almost feels like it is natural. Another side quest I went ahead and added, and this is how you can basically circumvent the whole staking out temples thing, is the pub. I came in here, and there's a character over here who I basically call Mr. Hagerman, and you talk to him, and he offers, you have to offer him a bribe, and if you choose one of the wrong things, like if you choose the 10, he doesn't give you really anything. If you choose the 100 or the 200 gold bribe, then he tells you about his house. His house doesn't activate until you talk to him. So same thing we did with the graveyard is what we do with his house. Basically, we set up a switch for Hagerman good equals on, and that gets set after you do one of those two bribes. And then you can go into his mafia house. His mafia house, interestingly enough, has smuggling routes through the sewers, which aren't really like very pronounced, but there's something that's impeding the smuggling routes, so it kind of sets you on this side quest when you go in there. So when you go into those, let's see, mafia house, so you go into his house, this character will encounter you directly, and she is a schizophrenic thief who is stealing from you. So that was kind of fun to script that. So then you come up here and you talk to him. He tells you about stuff in the sewer. I set up this bed so basically you can click on it and it'll move. Basically what happens is this thing becomes invisible, and then this pixel changes to the top part of the bed. Because it's moving so fast, it looks like it moves down, but it just changes the 2 pixels all at once, and basically the bottom one's a secondary event, which is based on the bed move switch. So basically it's a switch that gets turned on when you click on this. It never gets turned off. So once you move the bed once, it's always moved. That leads you down into a sewer where it is that there's all these there's basically a spider over here that you have to encounter, and then once you do, you can go back to Mr. Hagerman and tell him you cleared everything up. And as soon as you do that, he will go ahead and turn the graveyard on for you. Basically, is what in gaming, in the development terms, that's what's happening. After he notifies you that you can go to the graveyard, that's what's happening. And then you can go to the graveyard. So I went ahead and added those 2 different paths the players could take if they worked hard enough. They could find this path, although there's really only 1 character that gets there, whereas there is 5 other characters you can talk to in those temples, which is where you would expect players to go. And you can stake them out, which is going to be the much easier route. There's a lot of different characters I added on to the game, so I would challenge players to find them all and get them in your party. If I was to continue with this project, I might change some tile sets around. I have my brother. I went ahead and let him. I gave him the files, and he's going to maybe work on some music for it. But right now, the project is at a standstill unless I get enough interest to move forward doing more of it. If people really like this world and they want to investigate it some more, I have a lot of different ideas and things I can go with. Recently started working with some hobby game dev stuff, and that's done by Chris. I forget what his last name is. Anyways, I really like the way that stuff is going, and so I'm kind of moving more into that to practice different things. But he talks about how it is that you need to look at game development more like an instrument that you play, which I'm very close to because I do play guitar, or like a sport that you would practice. A lot of different things that go into that. So I'm definitely taking it that way. And what I've always told people about playing guitar is that with guitar, the best thing to do is find a song that's really simple, like a 3-chord song, and get good at playing those chords over and over again. And so that way, when you get frustrated with another song, you can always go back and jam out to that song. So in a way, what I just did by designing this game and developing this game is it's complete, but I can always add on more to it. And so this will be my song that I can always go back to when I get frustrated with other games. And it's really the tool is very, very simple to use once you get used to it. The scripting was a little bit maybe more advanced than some people may be ready for, although other people will probably find what I did to be very rudimentary, and they could probably do it a lot better, I'm sure. But if it works, it works. I mean, that's the main thing. Beyond that, everything else is pretty simplistic in the game. The enemies, I basically had to, in this area for instance, I had to set up the area so that way you could only encounter enemies here, so that way when it was that you were walking up to meet the boss, he would basically you would set off these events where different things would happen, and then once you met him, you would do the boss fight. Then he's going to run through this door. As soon as that happens, it's basically auto run time, and you basically do a final, almost like a cutscene where you don't really get to any control. He runs off, gets in this boat, and runs away to fight again another day, because this is a character that I'm going to invest a lot of time into, and I don't want him to be killed right away. I always liked recurring villains in my games, or in my different storytelling things, because this way I can kind of segue the character. We can go in a different direction, and then we can always bring this character back in a later chapter, and it's more realistic that way, I think, too, true to life. Like, things in life aren't linear like they are in a lot of RPGs these days. That's the way I really wanted to design this game. It was very open, very much like, here are a couple of clues, go and talk to some people and try to figure this out. We're not just going to hand you the keys to the kingdom. But even then, I had somebody that was somewhat proficient with RPGs run through the game in about 30 minutes. I think the first time through, you'd be lucky to spend more than 2 or 3 hours in this game. So I've already posted this game to a file sharing site, so I will be posting that link below on this YouTube. I'm going to go ahead and upload this to YouTube. I think I'm ready to take that plunge. Beyond that, if you guys really want to see more, I need to hear from you. If you guys want to see more chapters from this game or from this world, I did go ahead and design this world map, which you can kind of walk around after you finish the game. You're going to start here, but really nothing is added to it. There's a couple of different things. I went ahead and just spent some time doing this, and this is of course going to be changeable as well. I do have some other people that have shown some interest in the game, and so the tile sets I'm using I did buy, honestly. I bought all the tile sets on a Steam sale, And so some of the tile sets are from the default game and some of the tile sets are from other things. I use the character editor to make some of the characters, so you can come up here and it's pretty simplistic to use. You know, you change the hair or do whatever you want to do, and then you just save it, put the output in a file, and there you go, you got your character. So some of the characters I did that with and other characters I didn't. Again, I could have developed a lot of the characters a little bit more by giving them different dialogue at different points, whether they were, you know, to see if they were in your party or not. That was another thing that maybe I would do going back, to add more onto the game. Another thing I would do is if I were to, for some reason, go to the far future on this game, if I actually made it a full-fledged game where it was actually a 40-hour game, then I would consider like selling it, and then I would probably put a free version out, which would be something like what we have here, and then the pay version you would be able to change the names of your characters and do other things like that, and it would probably cost, I don't know, maybe $5, you know, depending on how much work I really put into it. I do have some other people which were interested in doing some tile sets for me. You know, I would have liked to have used two-part characters. Instead of like all my characters are basically one single cell, I like the two-cell characters like from Chrono Trigger a lot better, but I felt like that was going to take some more fiddling with and some other things that I didn't want to get into. The combat system is the default combat system from the game. I did change some items. I have one special item in there. Not really a lot went into the combat system other than balancing and make sure that it felt right. All the enemies I did somewhat create from scratch. At least half of them I did. Of course, the boss is completely made from scratch. So yeah, just go ahead and check out my game Constantine. I would really appreciate feedback, any feedback you're going to give me whatsoever. If it sucks, if you don't like it, make sure to tell me. But if it's good and you want to see more, definitely make sure to tell me. So that will encourage me to make more of this game, or make a chapter 2 or whatever else, and come back to it. And that will encourage me to do that. But right now, I'm really planning on moving forward and trying out some different things with the Chris. I think it's Chris De Leon's Hobby Game Dev, his course, and I'm even considering right now putting some money into it and buying the full course. But right now I'm on the preliminary, like, try it before you buy it type of exercises that he offers. So really excited to have my first foray into the digital world with this this game. So yeah, make sure to check it out. Let me know what you think. There's actually a lot of little Easter eggs if you're a Hex Shards of Fate player. There's little Easter eggs where it is that I stuck in little things from different people that I know from the community, and there'll definitely be some more of those if I do create more content for this game. So again, if you have any questions, go ahead and ask them either on my Twitter feed or post them below. Other than that, this is Aaron Squire signing off, saying God bless you and your families, and try not to rage too much out there.